Can you all hear me? Yes. All right, thank you so much. And I suppose I should put that in my pocket. Is that part of the key?
I didn't warn you.
No. Is this okay here?
Yeah, I think so. Can you hear him now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. Lee, where am I supposed to be to
You
not
do
obstruct
whatever you want.
Okay, thanks. There's so many rules, I can't handle them all. So I'm here to talk about redistricting. I have a PowerPoint, so we'll go through them and see what's going on. It's kind of up in the air right now, and we will get to that as we go on. I am with Fair Districts, kind of, sort of, which is a coalition of League of Women Voters in Common Cause, Ohio. I was one of their speakers in Northeast Ohio during the campaign. So here's what we're going to be talking about. Redistricting. What is it? What is gerrymandering? What's so bad about gerrymandering? Didn't we fix this already? We thought we did. A history of what's happened in order to get here. What's happening now in Ohio. What's happening nationally, just very briefly, because you could do a whole presentation on that alone. And then how can I stand up for fair maps and what you all can do. So we'll go on. You all have questions in the middle of something, just raise your hand and I will stop and try to answer as you go along. I know you want to do a Q&A, but sometimes you forget your questions and I want to get them as you see the slide. So everybody knows what redistricting is. It's required by the United States Constitution every 10 years. We do a census and then they determine the number of congressional seats and draw new maps based on the number of seats. When I was a kid, I think we had 22 seats in Ohio. So we're down to 15 now. Differs by state by state. Usually it's the legislature. There are actually 7 states who have a totally independent redistricting commission, something we tried to do and failed at getting across because we got voted down. The problem with gerrymandering is it gives an unfair advantage to parties in power, which we will see and have seen for a while now in Ohio. So gerrymandering, there are definitions of gerrymandering. The one I like to use, there's one up there, the one I like to use is where the majority party draws line to give them an unfair advantage to the minority party. And that's essentially what's happening in Ohio. The second definition that I like to use is gerrymandering is cheating. That's simple. And then the third definition, which kind of killed us in the campaign, was by Senator Gavarone, who said gerrymandering is the process of drawing district lines, even if you're drawing them fairly. And that's how gerrymandering ended up in the ballot language, which was meant to confuse everybody for the CNP campaign. So gerrymandering makes political parties more powerful. We know that. In Ohio, the General Assembly is actually more powerful than the governor because they can do whatever they want and basically override the governor's veto with 60%. Minority districts count less, so our voice in Ohio and our voice in Congress is kind of muted because we don't have any political power being in the minority due to gerrymandering. So, gerrymandering lets representatives pick their voters. They draw the lines to get their voters so they know they can win. They can't be held accountable. It lowers voter participation. Gerrymandering is a voter suppression tool. It essentially means that the primary is where the party chooses the candidate. And if you have a Republican district and the primary chooses, people vote in Republican districts, and primaries tend to be more right-wing than the general population, so they pick a candidate who may be to the right of the general population, but the general population leads Republican, so they vote Republican in the general election, or they don't show up at all because it's basically decided for them. It steals your power. unfortunately. And then people lose faith in the system, and they get discouraged, and then they stay home, and then you have a voter turnout rate in Cuyahoga County of less than 50%, because people stay home because it doesn't matter. So politicians are unaccountable. There's no competition except in primaries, and we see that in Republican districts. We also see that in heavily Democratic districts. In District 11, we know who's going to win in November 2026. It's going to be the Democratic candidate who runs, and that's going to be Chantal Brown. Hyper-partisan candidates. The best one I can point out in Ohio is Jim Jordan. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. What's that?
Thumbs down.
Yeah, thumbs down on Jim Jordan. Hyper-partisan candidates who don't have to compromise and push more extreme agendas. Low turnouts, et cetera. If you feel like politicians are ignoring you when you call them on the phone and you don't get an answer, or you get their voicemail, or you write them letters and they never respond, or they respond with a form letter that has nothing to do with the issue that you wrote about, it's because they're ignoring you, and they can ignore you, because that's what gerrymandering does. We're going to fix it one day. So we know in the past 10 years, Ohio is about a 55-45 state. If you look overall, in 2024, Trump won by 11 points in Ohio, but Sherrod won, lost by 3 points. So 8% split tickets, which is not happening as much as it used to, but it still happens. So 53-55% of the vote. Right now, the 10-5 split is 2/3, 1/3 in Congress. So 15 seats, 10 Republicans, 5 Democratic seats. In the General Assembly, and I know we're talking about Congress, but just in Ohio in the Senate, it's a 72-27 split through gerrymandering. In the House, it's a 65.67% and to 34.33. That's really important, that 65.67, because in order to pass something by emergency in Ohio, you need 2/3. So the Republicans are short one vote on getting something passed by emergency in the House. And that's going to be important later on in the talk, and we'll talk about that. So here's a very brief history of what's happened in order to get where we're at. So in 2011, we had maps. We tried to do something. There was a compromise. And we ended up with what is the snake on the lake that you all heard about right there. And some really funky looking districts, especially 11 that went from here, and then a little tiny part to get down to Akron and pick up right there. So it was really gerrymandered back then. Compactness, when you talk about writing districts and how you draw the lines, doesn't mean small. It means as simple lines as possible is what compact means when we talk about drawing lines. So that there is nothing compact about either 9 or 11 when you look at it. And the rest of them, down in 1, you can see what happened in the Cincinnati district there. So that's what they compromised at. And then we tried to fix it because it was really, really bad. So in 2015, we passed an amendment for the Ohio House and Ohio Senate. In 2018, we did it again. And when we talk about the amendment, the one thing that goes through the amendment is they wanted, when they wrote the amendment, it was passed by 70 to 75% of the electorate in Ohio. It was Democrats and Republicans, the majority and minority party, need to work together to come up with maps. So the first time it was tested was in 2021 and 2022, and it did not work. And we put disaster there, but it was a lot worse than that. And I'm not going to use those words in a church, so forgive me. So here's what happened, and I bolded the important stuff there. Okay? A lot of court cases going on, so the adopt a map Supreme Court says no. The Ohio Supreme Court, the maps out there that you can look at that have been moved to the Ohio Redistricting Commission portal. Anybody can draw a map on days of redistricting. It's a lot harder to draw a fair map on the site. So, the Democrats have put together a map, and that's what this map looks like here. Leader Isaacson and Leader Antonio have submitted their map. It's the same map both in the House and the Senate on what a congressional map should look like. And that's the map there. That's what it looks like on a partisan basis, the map. 7-8. 7 Democratic-leaning districts, 8 Republican-leaning districts. So it would look like the state. That's with the county lines drawn in, because I could do that, so I did. And that's with some names, so you know where counties are. I would always, when I got strange signatures on the redistricting amendment on a county I've never heard of, I always had to look it up. 88 counties in Ohio. That's what it looks like for Cleveland and vicinity. The lighter color is what currently is Max Miller's district. This is District 11, which is currently Chantel Brown's district. You'll see, I spoke to Lakewood a couple weeks ago. They are actually moving, if this map were to be adopted, which it won't be. Please don't come under any illusions that this is what we're going to be voting on in November 2026. But in order to get to the 7-8, Lakewood moves into Max Miller's district. That's what the county looks like on a partisan basis. I live in Shaker Heights. I don't know how many people live in Cleveland Heights or on the east side, but we live in a bubble. Make no question about it. If you've ever campaigned out in this neck of the woods here, it isn't like this neck of the woods at all. You can get doors slammed on you, you get sworn at, all sorts of things if you're campaigning for an issue or a candidate. Especially out in Strongsville, North Royalton out here, it's very red. So here's a breakdown of how we got to 7-8. And you can see, and again, I'm only talking about the Democratic map because the Republicans haven't put out a map. If the Republicans had put out a map, I would have another map to show you. So you can see how big their margins are here, and you can see how tight the Democrat margins are here. So this is still a toss-up as far as I'm concerned. And we can only, when you draw a map, you can only go so far. It's up to the parties to put out good candidates. So if the party puts out a not-so-good candidate, even if you have more Republican voters in there, they're either going to stay home, which is more likely to happen, or they're going to vote for the other side, or they're going to vote for a third-party candidate, or write-in candidate, or whatever. But these are some tight margins. So here's what redistricting, because this was a big word that you probably heard about if you're following it in the news, shall draw a map by September 30. Shall doesn't mean shall, according to a lot of people who sit in the General Assembly, because they didn't. They wanted an affirmative vote of 3/5 and at least 1/2 the members of 2 political parties. They wanted people to work together. The same thing's going on right now. The Ohio Redistricting Commission. Affirmative vote of 4 members, including at least 2 members of the commission who represent the 2 largest parties. Right now, it's 5-2 on the 7-member Ohio Redistricting Commission. So they would have to get the 2 Democrats to get together to vote, and we only have 9 more days to do it. So good luck with that without even a map. And they haven't even scheduled a second hearing yet. They actually said they would know by last night, and I haven't read anything about it, so who knows when the second hearing will be. They may tell us the night before. So here's the key part. If we don't have a map, by the last day of November, they shall pass a map 1/3 of each largest party compromise. If they don't do that, the General Assembly can pass a map by a simple majority vote, and then they have to follow all these rules that are listed there, okay? Can't be gerrymandered to favor a political party or not. General Assembly can't split. You can read the rest right there. Here's the problem. The arbitrator is the Ohio Supreme Court. The Ohio Supreme Court has already said it's up to the General Assembly. I mean, they've already made their opinion known that they're not going to really invalidate a map. So we're going to see what's going to happen. The Republicans, if they do pass it on a partisan, they will have to show in writing why it fits all this criteria. So remains to be seen. Pay attention. We'll see what happens. So that's the first notice of the Redistricting Commission that came out a couple of days before the Redistricting Commission actually was called to order. So here's what happened. The meeting, I don't want to preview that slide yet. So here's what happened. It's supposed to start at 9 o'clock. It probably started around 10 after 9, 12 after 9, or something like that. They swore people in. They passed rules on a partisan basis, and I sat in front of my computer because I was watching it online, talking to a friend of mine in Akron online, saying, no, they can't do that. And sure enough, they did. And then they took a little break and came back, and the chair, or the Rose, announced that, oh, by the way, we can't do that because we didn't pass on a partisan basis, so there are no rules. They didn't even try to pass rules. So they didn't even ask what changes to the rule that the Democrats would want so we could pass rules. No rules. So here's the result. I picked up two things. The most pathetic excuse for a meeting we've ever seen. These politicians are refusing to do their duty. Shame on you. And shame on you. Those are the two, Timken and Stewart are the two Republican members. And then Ohio Commission is currently operating without rules because they failed to get a vote from the minority party. So that's the rule. This is what it says right there in the Constitution. And my friend, Ohio Politics Guru, basically said, they just swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, and the very first thing they did was violate the Constitution. That was their first act. So, and it just amazes me that it's only a small section of the Constitution. No one even read it to know. So anyways, except the attorney there. So it's deeply troubling and also hilarious that they adopted a rule. So what's happening nationally? So that's where we are right now in Ohio, kind of in limbo. Will they produce a map by the next hearing? Probably not. Do they have a map in a back room? I'll bet anybody a buck here that they do. And it's either a 13-2 or a 12-3 map. Absolutely. It takes time to draw a map that's gerrymandered. So here's what's happening nationally. And this is why it's happening nationally. August 5th, President Trump said, I got the highest votes in the history of Texas. As you probably know, we're entitled to 5 more seats in Texas. A lot of people have asked me over the past 9 months or so that the president's been in office, will we have elections in 2026? Some of you may have heard that question also. My answer was always yes. My answer right now is yes, we'll have elections, but they may not count. And it's really very scary what's happened to democracy in our country right now. So Texas did their thing, and the president congratulated Texas. Big win. You know, big win. You'll stop mail-in voting. Stop paper, only paper ballots. All sorts of stuff. So here's what's going on in other states. North Carolina, Texas, Missouri, San Francisco, California has got Proposition 15. California is one of the states with an independent redistricting commission, which means they can't be overridden by the General Assembly or the House or the Senate or whatever they call their stuff in the individual state. There are people who have, their states like New York has something close to an independent redistricting commission, but they can still be overridden by the General Assembly, so it really doesn't count as totally independent. So in California, they have Proposition 50 on the ballot. If that passes, it gives the legislature a little bit of time to pass maps to counterbalance what's happening in Texas and across the country. So Florida is thinking about it. Indiana is thinking about it. Our vice president that we elected to the Senate actually flew there to try to convince them to do it. Maryland's hesitant. New York, they're trying to pass something, but because they have a quasi-independent redistricting commission, it actually wouldn't go in effect until 2028. So that's not going to help the minority party in 2026. So this is a bigger problem right now. Supreme Court case just heard a rehearing of Louisiana versus Calif that basically may invalidate Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which is the part that says that when you vote, when you draw these districts, you can't discriminate on the basis of color, race, membership, for the language of minority groups identified in a different section. From what I read in the paper, the Supreme Court in their hearing, and it's not to say that's what's going to happen, looked favorably on saying that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is unconstitutional. If that happens, you see what could happen to, you can see what happens with the map. We could lose, Democrats could lose 12 more seats. It's really scary. I don't know when the Supreme Court will come up with that decision. Typically they wait till the end of May to release decisions like that, but they've been doing crazy things with the shadow docket and putting out decisions without any explanation or anything else. There would have to be a written opinion, but they could do it at any point in time. So pay attention to the news on that case. We'll see what happens. So, what about a referendum? We can do a referendum. We tried a referendum on SB1. We didn't get the number of signatures required. Not because of Cuyahoga County. We did great in Cuyahoga County. We had a lot of signatures. We were about a little over 9%. I would have preferred 12% of the people who voted for governor in the last gubernatorial election. We didn't get there, but still, Cuyahoga County, great job to anybody who signed the petition, led the state in signatures, percentage-wise, and number-wise. So, 6% is 248,000, 3% from 44 of the last 88 counties you got to get. File within 90 days of signing the law, and we actually won't have 90 days because we'd have to, not me, but who's ever doing it would have to write the petition and get it certified by the Attorney General and Secretary of State. So that takes a little bit of time. For SB1, they were actually slow in starting, so we actually only had about 47 days to collect signatures when it was said and done, which is a problem. Now, here are a couple issues. One, if they get one Democrat in the House to flip, they can pass it on an emergency basis. If they pass it on an emergency basis, we cannot referendum it. That's just what the law says. So it goes into effect immediately when they pass it on an emergency basis. Go ahead.
So is the referendum would be in relationship to the map?
So,
Can you repeat the question,
so basically what happens is the General Assembly passes a bill.
Question, please.
Repeat the question.
Oh, sure. She asked, would the referendum be related to the map? So what happens is the General Assembly passes a bill, and the bill gets signed by the governor, so we referendum the bill, which is actually the map. But it's House bill or Senate bill, whatever number they attach to it, and that would be the referendum. If we're successful on a referendum, what happens is the law is paused to go into effect until the electorate, y'all, have a chance to vote on it in November 2026, okay? And you vote yes or no on the map, which means that we probably, and I'm just guessing what the courts will do, because it'll end up in the courts, they'll probably say you'll have to vote on the existing maps that we have now in 2022, 2024, continue to 2026. A 10-5 map is better than a 12-3 map or a 13-2 map. But getting back, so if they flip one seat, one Democrat in the House, I did this presentation a couple weeks ago, and Leader Antonio was in the audience, which I didn't know because she walked in late. Had I known, I would have been a little more nervous that I'm lecturing to the minority leader of the Senate. So I was fortunate that I didn't know. Anyways, she promised me that that's not going to happen. Okay? But they can also pass a budget to it. And if they pass an appropriation to it, then we can't referendum it either, which is why the budget, the biennium budget that the governor signed into law and vetoed 67 line items, we couldn't referendum. That was a terrible budget for lots of different reasons that I won't go into. But you can't referendum a budget because of an appropriation. If they attach an appropriation to it, we cannot referendum it. Leader Antonio wasn't so sure about that, on what they can do, because on a partisan basis, they can put a money onto it and say, we're going to fund this. And once they do that and attach a dollar amount to it, we can't referendum. So, to be decided, we remain to be seen on what's going to happen. We tried this twice before in the state of Ohio. This is the authorization. It gives us the right. So, 1916, they tried a referendum on a map, and they were sued. And the Ohio Supreme Court said, yes, the Constitution says you can referendum a map, a bill with a map in it. So that's the opinion from 1916. It says we can do it, David versus Hildebrand. So if anybody says, can we do it? You now know that the answer is yes, we can. So 2 times we did this. So House Bill 194, this is a really screwy thing. Did all sorts of things about voting, reduced early voting, lots of other crazy stuff. There was a successful petition. We turned in the petition with enough signatures to get on the ballot. Instead of getting on the ballot, the Ohio Assembly, General Assembly, repealed it and signed Senate Bill 295, which basically said 194 wasn't a law anymore, so we couldn't referendum it. So they just said, okay, you referendum 194, so we're just going to pass a different law, 295, and you guys can try another referendum, but we're going to vote on that. So anyways, it legally removed. So that didn't quite work out as people planned. I don't think they can do that with a map, because we really need to know how we're going to vote. And here's the other problem. The deadline in November 30th, 90 days from that, when it takes 90 days for a law to go into effect in the state of Ohio, unless it's an emergency, is March 1st, February 29th, somewhere around there. I didn't count it out. The problem is March 1st is after February 4th. Any candidates here? Anybody running for office? February 4th is when you have to turn in your petitions as a candidate to declare your candidacy. And if you're a member of Congress, you're collecting signatures and you don't know what your district is, it's a huge problem. Okay? This is all messed up. And this has been going on. We knew about this in 2022. It's not like the General Assembly didn't have plenty of time to work on a compromise and put out fair maps. Okay? So they've been sitting on their hands for a couple of years now. But SB 5, we actually did referendum that. And that was a bill that basically was an anti-union bill. It took away funding from unions. So what happened is firefighters, police officers, teachers, the unions were strong. They got together and collected enough signatures and collected enough money so they could have advertising and everything else. And we upheld, we voted against the bill. So you vote no on the bill, against the bill, and the bill did not become law. I told Brian Pearson of the North Shore AFL-CIO that this is the key for democracy in our state and the country is the unions need to be united in what they're doing. And unfortunately, that's not happening. That's another talk. But SB 5 was successful. So that's the last time that that actually happened. Here's what you can do to support fair maps in Ohio. You can tell people about what you heard tonight. You know, that things are unfair and that gerrymandering is bad. And you can tell them what gerrymandering is. Because one of the biggest problems with the CNP campaign is the yard sign said gerrymandering is bad, and the other side put gerrymandering is bad. If we had a tagline that said vote yes for fair maps, it would have been much better. We didn't. And maybe lesson learned, but it's hard to say don't vote for fair maps, okay? Lots and lots of people do not understand what gerrymandering is. Remember, gerrymandering is drawing lines to give one political party an unfair advantage over another political party, or it's cheating. That's an easier one to remember. The Ohio Redistricting Commission right now isn't accepting testimony, so we're not sure. They may, I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see what they do. They may produce a map. I don't think so. They may have another hearing. I think so. It may be 20 minutes. And then we'll move on to November. I think that's what probably will happen. If you see something on social media, follow Common Cause and Legal Women Voters. Repost it on your own social media. Just tell your friends. Anything we can do to make people more aware of what's going on is better. Knowledge is better. And then in November, there'll be a call to action to really call all the Republican members of the General Assembly and saying, we want fair maps. And I'm not saying that we want a map that puts the Democrats in power, but we just want a map that represents the state of Ohio. And if the state of Ohio typically votes 55-45 in elections, we're not deep red, but we're not pink either. We're kind of red. That's what the General Assembly, that's what the congressional districts should look like. That's an 8-7 or a 9-6 map. It is not a 13-2 map. I'll get you in 1 second. I promise. Okay, so that's where I go. That's me up there. And then I have a couple more slides we can talk about in a second. But go ahead. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
And you want me to go back over this?
No,
she took notes.
so timing, so if we do this fall through process where there's a dereliction of duty all the way down, and then we end up in the General Assembly, and you want us to call them then, what's that timing?
They have till November 1st through November 30th. They have to, according to the Constitution, produce a map by November 30th. At some point, I really think the Secretary of State is going to come out and say, y'all really need to produce a map by November 4th so that people who run for Congress know what maps they're going to do. He hasn't done that yet. I think that he may or may not do it. He did it on the last round. He came out and said that you need to do this by this date, and they just ignored him. But nevertheless, he came out and said you need to do this by October 15th or whatever, because the primary was earlier for the presidential election. So we'll see. But if we decide to do a referendum, please pay attention. We're going to need everybody's help to collect signatures. It's really, really hard to collect signatures in the middle of winter. There are no street fairs. There are no King's Day 1, no King's Day 2. There's no Pride Day. There's nothing that attracts lots and lots of people. So, door to door, standing in front of wherever, where we get people standing in front of churches, places of worship, just any place we can get in and get signatures. It's really hard to do in winter to get signatures. But There are a lot of people who are going to try. In fact, I just saw in the news today that Leader Jeffries is saying he's going to try to raise money if that's going to happen, a referendum in Ohio.
Do you know if you have to get permission to be there to get signatures? Like, let's say
Wait a minute, say again.
there's something going on at, say, your library. Do you need to contact the library to say, is it okay if I come with this position? Or
So
can you-
libraries are unique. Libraries are considered by the, so can you petition inside a library? What's the question? Libraries are unique. The Ohio Supreme Court has said libraries are like semi-public because they have a specific purpose. People go to the library to get books. It's not really what happens now, but nevertheless. So you can collect signatures in front of a library on the sidewalk, but you actually cannot collect signatures inside a library. They're unique like that. And private businesses are unique too, like where Heinen's is at Chagrin and Lee. We can't collect signatures anywhere near Heinen's because it's all private property. You have to stand out on the sidewalk on Chagrin or on Lee, and nobody stops there. Everybody drives into the parking lot. So it's really hard, but if we have everybody's help, we can do this.
Churches, you were saying churches, that it would be a place that we could do this.
Yeah, we had a lot of support. I spoke probably in a half a dozen to 9 or 10 churches during the Citizens Not Politicians campaign on Sunday mornings or whatever. I would go in, and after, we'd go to a separate room. So a lot of churches are very supportive.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh,
I would like to get a microphone so that people can ask questions.
Sure.
Are you at that point where we're ready?
yeah, I'm trying to
Okay,
answer
great.
questions. I can go on if there are any slides that you want to go back to. But yeah, you didn't need my permission to get up.
I'm going to ask anybody that has a question to raise your hand. I will hold the microphone to prevent distortion. And anybody got a question here?
This one right there.
Okay.
One quick thing when you talk about collecting signatures, is it still important when a registered voter signs a petition for the referendum that they sign as their name appears on the voting registration so it doesn't get invalidated when they send the petitions in to be counted?
So when you sign a petition, they're most concerned about, are you the person signing the petition who's registered there? Okay, at the address. So they look at the last name. They ignore the middle initial. And if you're Robert versus Bob, most times that's okay. Cuyahoga County has a great Board of Elections. I can't speak more highly about the work that they do. I can't speak for other 87 other counties, but that's what the general information that comes from the Secretary of State is. You're concerned that the person signing the petition is the person who's registered to vote at the address that they put down. And I will tell you, personal experience, the last time I filled out a voter registration form for Cuyahoga County was when I turned 18 last century, and I haven't updated my signature since. I promise you my signature is a lot different now than it was back when I was a kid. They don't care. They've never questioned it, and I've actually gone in to make sure my signature is counted.
Hi. I had a couple of questions that came to mind really early in your presentation. I wrote down and just thought I'd call them out. They're not as strategic in the short-term sense, and more like broader questions. Two questions, and maybe pick the one that makes more sense to you, because they're kind of weird. First, what would happen if they made a rule about the shape of a district, say 4 or maybe 3 sides, like a triangle? No district could be, snake on a lake, say, or something like that. And then my other question was, what effect would ranked choice voting have in maybe combating redistricting or gerrymandering? I mean, ranked choice versus, this would be what national.
So first off, I don't care about the triangle, okay? It's more important that we keep communities of interest together, that we have 765,000 in each congressional district, and that we keep counties together as much as possible. So Cuyahoga County is in a triangle, so it makes it really hard. There are mathematical formulas to figure out how compact the district is. And to get a 1, because it's decimal, to get a 1, it's a perfect circle. There are no districts in perfect circle. Everything's down from that a little bit. As far as ranked choice voting goes, again, my opinion based on this, so ranked choice voting would mean no primaries, right? And you eliminate what we call the fringe elements of both parties taking control of who's going to win the election. So let's say that you have 3 people or 4 people running an election, and the fringe party element gets 40% of the vote, and there are 3 other candidates. Well, probably the fringe party person is going to be ranked 4th on the rest of their ballots, and they're never going to get to that 50+1 threshold. So that would certainly help with people feeling that their vote counts. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, kind of, if anything, dissolved and diluted quite a bit.
Yeah. The problem on the other side is that if you gerrymander in a district enough so that you have nothing but the fringe or the right side voting in it, you already are over that 50+1 threshold. So again, we want maps that look like the state, how the state votes, and that's the overall goal. Ranked choice voting solves a different problem of keeping people interested in voting and coming up with a way to eliminate that fringe minority candidate. Yeah, yeah, they work together, but the General Assembly has basically said, you're not going to get ranked choice voting in Ohio.
So this might be a kind of a naive question, but why do we even need districts? Why don't we just have like 1 person, 1 vote and forget about the districts?
Okay, fair enough. So if you have 1 person, 1 vote, and you have 15 people, 15 congressional people who are at large in Ohio, that means that each person kind of acts as a senator and responsible for all 11.8 million Ohioans when it comes to constituent concerns, and that's kind of unworkable on that type of thing. Also, if you just go on number of votes, you would get really a hodgepodge of 55, 45 when it happened. Essentially, you would end up with what we have now in the Senate going to Congress, 2 Republican senators. You'd probably end up with 15 Republican representatives, and communities of interest, minorities would never get a representation at all. So we like the 1-person vote, but within a district.
Just a quick question. If they do adopt and manage to get through the 12-3 or whatever map, what are the chances that they will create swing districts? Is there any possibility? Because people don't disappear just because you keep redrawing.
So the question is, could we get...
What are the chances, like in Texas, when they redrew the map, they found out that in certain areas they created swing districts,
Okay,
as opposed to like it's going to be all Republican. So what's the chance?
fair enough. So the United States Constitution requires a census every 10 years, and there are 435 seats in the Congress, and you divide that by the entire number of people in the United States, 340 million, and that's how you determine how many people are in each district. And because Ohio's population is 11 million or whatever, we only get 15 districts. We can't...
Swing districts. A district is purple, so to speak, where it could go either Democrat or Republican. So if they over gerrymander the map to make it like 80% Republican vote, wouldn't they be creating swing districts? Swing as an S-W-I-N-G.
I don't understand the question. Try
A
again.
swing district is a district that okay, so they think that they can gerrymander the map so much that it will make all of the Democratic votes sort of disappear in a pool of Republican votes. But it's still 45%, actually more than 45% in some cases, depending on the candidates, or like for Senate, where you can't get rid of 45% of the population, even if you can draw the map, thinking that you're going to make it all Republican. What are the chances that we would have a swing district? So like, let's say, the district down in Cincinnati, that they might try to, no, let's say closer to Columbus, a district closer to Columbus, that you cut up Columbus and you try to turn it into a gerrymandered district, might end up working against them.
Yeah, you have to have good candidates. So yes, but if they gerrymander it enough and come up with a 15-0 because we only have 15 congressional seats, that would be unconstitutional according to the Ohio Supreme Court and the United States Supreme Court, because you have to have minority districts represented. There's extreme gerrymandering would not be permitted.
That's not my question, but that's okay. I don't think I'm explaining myself right. Maybe somebody else can help me explain.
If it was equal, like Democratic and Republican, so not either one of the parties were,
But somebody wins within that district.
Yeah,
So
so
one way or the other eventually. I think I right. But in the end, somebody votes within that and one or the other party wins. So why
I
is
understand
purple?
how it works. What I'm
Right.
saying is that instead of being a red district, it would turn into a purple district.
you can't.
Correct.
Where it could be either a Democratic or Republican candidate might win because you think that you're skewing it, but actually you're making it.
There's
Only so much you can skew millions of people.
That's right. You can only skew it so much because this year, there's a Republican's going to win, right? You can't make it so it's kind of even toss-up. There are only a couple toss-up districts in the state right now, and that's Representative Capter's district and Representative Sykes' district. And those are the only two districts that are toss-up, and that we aren't sure who's going to win. We just know the way people lean based on previous voting experience.
So what you're saying is there's no Republican toss-up districts. There's no districts that are already red that are close. Like all the Republican districts are landslide.
All the Republican districts, I'm trying to find the one slide, right there. So 15 congressional seats. This is the map proposed by the Democrats right now. If you get over 55 to 58% of the vote in an election, that's kind of considered a landslide, 60%. You win 60-40, you've done a good job on running a campaign. And you'll see that of the 8 Republican districts right there, 6 of them get over 65%. Because it's just, that's the way the population is in rural counties. And you'll see that a couple of Democratic leaning districts right now, those are really close. And it really depends on the candidate on who's going to win. We can say which way the district leans, but if the Democratic Party or the Republican Party puts up a candidate that, 2 weeks before the election, it comes out that they lied on their resume about something, that could skew the election to the other side, and the other side could win, even though when you look at the voting history, they shouldn't win. So it's up to the parties to put up good candidates. But some of these, to get to a 7-8 map, those are really close. And I know if I were campaigning in District 7 with a split of 1 point there, that's a really tough win.
I was at a meeting, and it must have been more than 5 years ago, it was pre-pandemic, and they had a representative from the Republican Party and Democrat Party, and they were talking about reforming this, and they didn't think it was going to happen, and here we are today. And again, it was probably more than 5 years ago. But one of the things they talk about is we're talking here today strictly about the national representation, and they said that we did have a referendum historically that fixed it at the state level. I just wanted to have you comment on that, if I'm remembering the history correctly, that we did have, it was where the citizens did want to have true representation, and they were able to fix it at the state level, but then it didn't happen at the national level. So that we do have a little hope that most citizens don't want gerrymandering, but it's the current people in power, it's to their advantage not to put out a map and to wait to the last minute.
So, in 2020, 2019, 2021, we did collect some signatures. And we came up, there was a compromise map that whoever was in charge, wasn't me, decided to go with the compromise and go with the 2015, 2018 amendments. And it was a compromise map, and it didn't work so well. So, yeah, there was hope for a compromise that the parties would work together, but no, it didn't. And here we are today.
Yeah, at the national, but at the state, is it working better? Do we have more representation in the State House versus in the...
No, we have, the representation at the State House is worse.
Okay, thank you, that's why I needed to hear.
Yeah.
I misremembered what this was learned.
The representation, somewhere around here, at the State House is much worse.
Okay, great.
Just a point of order, that other chart you showed was a proposal. That's not actuality. That was the proposed map from the Democrats.
Yeah,
That's not actually.
No, that's not actually. That's the only map right now that's under consideration in the General Assembly and on the Ohio Redistricting Commission. The Democrats got together and proposed a map. The Republicans, we would hope, would put out their own map, and then everybody would sit down and say, okay, let's compromise and come up with something in between that everybody can agree on. The problem is that if you close your eyes, you can see the Republican map. Sorry. It's true. They just haven't put out their map yet. And what we're fearful of is they're not going to put out their map until November, when they put out their 12-3 or 13-2 map, and they pass it on a partisan basis.
We're going to take one more question, and then we're going to turn it over to Jennifer to close our meeting for tonight. So,
You turn it over to you.
One other difficulty that we've run into, and we saw in the last election, when we have successfully collected signatures, gotten a citizen-initiated referendum on the ballot, the language that then appears for voters to vote on often distorts or twists the intention that the circulated referendum addresses. Are there ways we can avoid that recurring or not?
Yes. So we had the problem with the Reproductive Freedom Amendment. They changed the ballot language. We had the problem with the Citizens Not Politicians Amendment, where they changed the ballot language, and the Republican Party said we did that to confuse people. Okay? The way to fix that is to vote for the other party when it comes to November 2026, and instead of the current Secretary of State who distorts the ballot language, get a Secretary of State who will put in fair language. And that's the way to fix that. Okay? The only other way to fix that is another constitutional amendment. Because who writes the ballot language right now is defined by the Ohio Constitution. So two ways. The gentleman who's serving right now as Secretary of State put really unfair ballot language in, vote that party out of office. There are two candidates right now declared who have both said on their platform running for Secretary of State that they want fair ballot language. That's the way to do it, only two ways, you know? The party that believes in democracy is supposed to be nonpartisan. I'm doing a really bad job. I apologize for that. The party that believes in democracy, we need to get more votes for that party in order to eliminate the exact problem we're talking about, which really hurt us in the CNP campaign. So many people voted the wrong way. It frustrated the heck out of me. I worked 9 months on that campaign, like every day. And losing, I knew we were going to lose like a weekend, whatever, but losing was really hard. Because for a long time, I thought we were going to win. That was a tough one.
So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. We
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate